Hello and welcome to this Department of Education presentation on how to get into teaching. I'm really pleased that you've been able to join us today, and we recognise that this is a big move, a big career move for many people. So there's a few slides in this presentation, and I'm simply going to talk one-to-one with you today about what we're going to cover, and then look at a film. There's a short film clip as part of the presentation, and then just look at the incentives and the routes and the process about how to get into teaching. So what we're going to cover today is why train to teach. What are the rewards of getting into teaching? Not only financial, but obviously personal, and in terms of your fulfillment as a career. How you train to teach, where those courses exist, how to apply for teacher training. And then we're going to look at the qualifications that you need in order to train to teach. There are minimum requirements in terms of what you need in terms of basic qualifications. We're going to look at the area of school experience and how you can prepare for school experience and the importance of school experience as part of this process. And also the whole application process around UCAS and how to apply for teacher training. And then at the end, I'm going to refer you to a team of specialist teacher training advisors, such as myself, or a large team across the country that give you support with important aspects of your application, such as the personal statement, your interviews, school experience, and ongoing support. So those are the areas we're going to cover. It's a short presentation, and I hope that you enjoy it.
Morning, all right?
Nice trim, mate. Very good.
Sit down. 10B, here's what's happening today. So, what's in the periodic table?
Elements.
Elements, right, good. Can everybody give me an example of an element? Nice one, lifesaver. Cheers, mate. But that's the kind of thing that we're looking at doing.
I just don't get it.
Okay. Pens down, let's try this a different way. Move your shoulders, more energy, and you're getting further apart into a liquid. Very good. Stop. Good. Look at it, what was happening? Ollie, what's going on, mate? Pick it up. Whoa.
Okay.
If you need anything, come see me. Okay, break time's over.
Is it all time now?
So, you're 11. 4 weeks until your exams. And I want you to do as well as a know you can. It stops right now. So what does that mean?
I don't know, sir.
You put down what you think.
I've got for the unit meters per second.
That's brilliant. I would not have thought about doing it that way. Well done. Have you done your homework? Do you have any other questions? Come on, you've got your hand up. Hey, listen. Come on, lads. Does that change whether you're for or against?
Against.
So what makes this good? Come on, look a bit closer. You can't see the gases because there's so much pushing at the lid.
Jesus.
More energy. Really good, buddy, that. We'll be teaching everybody else soon. Okay, is that any better?
Nice one, sir. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching.
What we saw in that video, again, was the relationships that you need to build as a teacher. I think teaching is based on relationships. If you have a good relationship with other staff and you have formed very strong, purposeful relationships with the students, then the job is a great job. Successful teachers are teachers who communicate clearly to their children by the way in which they speak and the way in which they behave in the classroom that they are there for them. And when children realise that the teacher, you, the teacher, are there to support them, to help them, to make the most of their talents and abilities, then the classroom is an incredible place to work. Teaching is a rewarding job. I've been a teacher for over 30 years, and one thing I can tell you is that when you enter that school, it might be another Wednesday, it might be another Friday, but it's not going to be the same. It's going to be very different, and you never know what's going to happen moment by moment. And one thing I can certainly promise you about a career in teaching is it's never boring. Many people go into teaching for different reasons, and one of the reasons that they go into teaching is because the job that they're in did not fulfill the expectations that they had. When they went to that university and did that degree, often they end up in a job which is very, very different to the job that they thought they were training for. Teaching is very rewarding, very busy, very exciting. So what are the rewards of teaching? Well, they are financial. It's a career. It's a job. And we're going to look at some of the financial rewards of getting into teaching and some of the financial incentives that are currently available if you're thinking about going into teacher training. The main reason why you would want to go into teaching is to make a difference. And as you've seen on many of the slides, you'll see this phrase, every lesson shapes a life. And it really does. And great teachers can have a massive impact on their students. But it's also a job and a career that's going to shape your life. So whilst you may want to go into teaching to make a difference to young people, to that local community that you live in, those are the right motivations to get into teaching. I can tell you from my own personal experience that teaching completely shaped my life. If I hadn't trained to be a teacher, I wouldn't have met my wife and I wouldn't have had my children. It's that significant a career move. And most of my friends when I was teaching full-time came from the school. So it's going to shape your social life as well as your working life. And no 2 days are the same. And it's an incredibly vibrant environment to work in. Schools are incredible places to be. When we come to talk about school experience shortly, I would strongly recommend, if it's possible for you to get into a local school, to experience yourself what schools are like, because often they're very different when you go back into a school as an adult. But teaching is a career. Some teachers remain in teaching for 5 years, some 15, some the whole of their working life. And there's a very clear structure of continual professional support and of promotion and advancement in teaching. So let's get down to the real nitty-gritty of the rewards of teaching. Why would someone become a teacher? New teachers start on a salary, as you can see, of between 24 and 30,000, and the range is dependent on some factors such as location. So typically you would expect to earn more if you're working in inner London or on the London fringes than you would in the home counties. And also, salaries can often be dependent on whether you have previous and relevant experience. So many people that are going into teaching now are career changers. Statistically, the average age of someone going to teaching is about 37. And this is a big move. But the rewards for teaching are there, and often schools and employers will take into account previous experience. The other benefits, of course, associated not with the salary are the fact that you have stability in terms of a regular income. It affects your credit rating positively in terms of being able to buy property and other things. And obviously there's a very good and well-known pension scheme that's associated with a career in teaching. 94% of teachers who come out of schools and universities with either qualified teacher status, QTS, and a PGCE, postgraduate certificate in education, walk into a full-time teaching job within 6 months of qualifying, which is really fantastic. Obviously, there are the benefits of the extended school holidays, which is unique to the profession, and also the opportunity to get involved in things outside of school with colleagues and with students in other activities. So, for example, I've known in the past teachers who were maths teachers, who were French nationals, who also taught French as part of their job. I've known science teachers who were into football and became football coaches and trainers for the students in the school. So it's a very varied job, and very often teachers are teaching 1, 2, sometimes more subjects and getting involved in the wider life of the school. As a trainee teacher, you're going to get lots of support. So there's always a dedicated person in each school, and certainly in the university, who is dedicated to support you through your training year. And you will form a strong relationship with that person. But the majority of the teaching training will be done, of course, by real teachers with real students in real schools. The course is just over 34 weeks long, and 24 of those weeks must be spent typically in 2 placements in 2 different schools. So you're not going to be learning how to become a teacher in lectures and seminars. You're going to be teaching on the ground in real schools, in real situations, and that's great. We're now going to look at the financial support that's available. As I've said earlier in this presentation, many people are going into teaching from an established career. Some people are moving into teaching from a position of job uncertainty or redundancy, or the threat of redundancy, or early retirement, or many people are going into teaching having left university and are just looking for that first career. And whatever your situation, teaching is a really positive option for you. So we're going to look at the tax-free bursary and scholarships that are available at the moment to support you. We're going to look at the tuition fee loans and maintenance loans that are available to everyone that goes into teaching, and also the extra financial support that's available to match your particular situation. There are particular incentives for subjects at secondary level, and you can see those expressed on this slide. These relate to anyone who's looking for a teacher training career, to train to be a teacher in chemistry, modern languages, maths or physics. If you have a good honours degree, up to a minimum of a 2-2 honours degree, then you can expect to receive a tax-free bursary of £26,000 over a 10-month period, which is typically the typical length of a teacher training course. That equates roughly, approximately, to £2,600 tax-free going into your bank account whilst you're doing your training. And that's a gift. It's not a loan. You won't need to pay that back. Similarly, if you have a higher level degree, typically around a 2-1 first or a postgraduate additional qualification such as a PhD or master's, you can apply to various institutions, for example in relation to physics, to the Institute of Physics or the Institute of Maths, in order to gain an additional £2,000 for that scholarship. There's a limited number of places available for that scholarship, and you would need to research the contact details of those particular institutions and have a discussion with them around the availability and your suitability for that particular scholarship. There are also early career payments for teachers who remain in teaching after 3 years and after 5 years. So there are some retention benefits for people that are going into teaching as newly qualified teachers once they've gained their qualifications. So the total value of the tax-free bursaries available, you can see on this table, for anyone out there who's thinking of training to be a chemistry teacher, modern languages, maths or physics, can be a minimum after 5 years of £32,000, or through the scholarship scheme to £34,000. And I want to make it clear that you don't necessarily need to have a pure chemistry degree or a pure maths degree or pure physics degree in order to train for those subjects. For example, there are many people I've supported as a teacher training advisor who have economics or who have mechanical engineering degrees that have gone into maths or physics. Similarly, I've also supported people with biology degrees or biomed degrees that have gone into chemistry teaching. And I have also supported people who were French teachers or French specialist nationals who have gone into modern languages in French and Spanish. So don't think that just because you haven't got a pure maths degree or a pure physics degree that those particular subjects aren't available to you, because they are. This slide shows in more detail the bursary and the scholarship scheme. You can see the scholarships that are available for £28,000 for computing here, and also the enlarged scholarship for geography for £17,000. The bursary on the right hand side, you'll see, differs in relation to each subject, and you might reasonably ask, why are there different amounts? Well, this is driven by priority. So there's a huge priority in relation to attracting good graduates into computer science, into biology, into the classics, and it goes down through the scales so that there are lesser bursaries, still attractive, but lesser bursaries for design technology, English, and primary has a £6,000 bursary if you decide to train to be a maths specialist within the primary school. So let's look at the process for getting into teaching. How do you apply? Teacher training courses normally last between 30 and 34 weeks, around 10 months, and that's an academic year, so starting typically in September and finishing in June, July of the following year. As I've said earlier in this presentation, the vast majority of your training will be very practical, very hands-on, working alongside a very experienced teacher. All the schools that are set up to provide teacher training are themselves either good or outstanding schools, so you can be assured of the quality of the teacher training that you're going to get on the ground from practicing teachers. In lots of cases where you're doing teacher training through a university course, you will be released into a school for 2 12-week placements, so that makes the 24 weeks of school experience. And if you decide to do schools direct training where you start in the school, then very often 1 day a week or 1 day a fortnight you'll be released from the school base that you're placed in into a university for seminars and some lectures to look at things like lesson planning, safeguarding, and assessment of learning. In each of the courses that you take, you will be assigned a personal mentor, someone who is going to support you, who is going to look at your planning, look at your assessment. The teachers in those schools will be, first of all, demonstrating teaching, so the course will start with lots of observation of teaching, but very quickly you'll be taking parts of lessons, sometimes very often the starter or the plenary at the end of the lesson. And increasingly and very quickly, you'll be taking whole lessons. But remember, the teacher is always going to be in the room and will be observing you. And at the end of the lesson or at the end of the school day, will be feeding back to you on the things that you did well in your teaching and the things that you need to amend. So it's a very, very practical, hands-on, close learning environment and great fun. In addition to qualified teacher status, which all courses will result in, you will also get a postgraduate certificate in education in every case where your learning and training is based directly in a university. So that postgraduate certificate in education is always available to you if you go the university route. The vast majority of school-based routes offer both qualified teacher status and a PGCE, but not all. So if the PGCE qualification is important to you, then just check with the provider, particularly if it's a school-based provider, that the PGCE is available. I want to make a point about the PGCE as well. Some people have asked me, why do you need a PGCE? Well, the way I look at it is that QTS is really, it's like a driving license to teach. You can't drive a car without a driving license, and you can't teach in school in England without qualified teacher status. So that's a good way to look at qualified teacher status. But a postgraduate certificate of education has some kudos attached to it. It's the letters that you can put after your name. It's also very often a requirement should you want to teach outside of the UK. And there's some evidence that if you wanted to teach abroad, then often an advert for a teaching post abroad will relate to a PGCE. The other thing I want to say about QTS and PGCE while we're on this slide, though, as somebody who has been the head teacher of 2 high schools, that head teachers based their appointments on the candidate's ability to teach and not on whether or not they have a PGCE as well. And to be very blunt about it, head teachers will take some regard to where you trained, but their decision about whether to appoint you as a teacher in their school will be based on what they see you do in the classroom with those students on the day of the interview. So above all these things, your ability to engage young people in your subject or to engage young people in learning, if it's a primary based post, that is the most important thing. The best teacher gets the job. So how do you find the right course? Well, there's a very, very useful tool on the Get Into Teaching website. It's very easy to find. If you go on that search tool, it's very simple to use. You simply put the time where you're living, so for example, Manchester. You then put the subject you want to teach or the age range, whether it's primary or secondary, and you press return. And the response will be that you'll get a range of universities and schools direct courses that are available in your area, probably up to about 10-15 miles away. You can further search through the drop-down menu and exclude school-based courses and just simply look at university courses offering QTS and a PGCE. Or if you want to do your training exclusively in a school through Schools Direct, you can filter Schools Direct, and then further, if you wanted to do a Schools Direct salaried course or an unsalaried course, you can also just look at those particular courses. Once you've done that, my advice is to list the providers that are closest to where you live. On the UCAS form, you have to put 3, not 5. You have to put 3 training providers on your UCAS form. Really, to be honest with you, I would choose the 3 training providers that are closest to where you live, and you'll get a feel when you contact those training providers which one fits you. The minimum entry requirements for teaching are that you have at least GCSE Maths and English for secondary, or GCSE Maths, English and a science subject for primary. The important word to bring to your attention is the little phrase or standard equivalent, because many candidates out there would have done their qualifications before GCSEs. So in my experience, I did O-levels, and some of you will relate to that. Others would have done their qualifications outside of the UK in another system, but there is a requirement that your English and your maths for secondary school teaching is at the level of GCSE, grade C or grade 4 or above, and that for primary, because you'll be a generalist teacher at primary, that you also have a science GCSE or equivalent subject. The other main requirement is that you have a degree, and it's important that if you have a degree that you check with the training provider, and my recommendation is you do that over the telephone rather than by email, that you check with that training provider that they recognise the degree qualification that you have, whether it's a degree qualification from the UK or whether it's a degree qualification from overseas. Subject knowledge enhancement. You may have heard of the SKE courses that are available through many of the providers. These courses are short online courses very often that are done as distance learning to support you in preparation for teacher training. They're typically between 8 and 12 weeks on average, and are used to support you in boosting your subject knowledge. So for example, there are occasions when somebody's degree, for example, their geography degree, they might have done geography at Edinburgh University, they got a 2-2 degree, but it was 10, maybe even 15 years ago, and they're concerned about whether they have the right level of subject knowledge. Well, an SKE course over 12 weeks, working from home, can really boost your subject knowledge and also help you to understand the geography that's currently being taught in the curriculum in secondary schools. The other reason why someone might do a subject knowledge enhancement course is when their degree is not a pure degree. So for example, somebody who wanted to change to be a maths teacher, but they had an accountancy qualification, or they had studied economics at university, or even mechanical engineering. All of those subjects have a lot of maths in them, but it's not a straight maths degree. Or somebody wants to be an English teacher, but they haven't got an English degree. They've got a law degree or a history degree, which again, obviously, are great degrees, but it's not a pure English degree. An SKE course can be really, really helpful in boosting your subject knowledge and your confidence. The other occasion is where you have someone who studied French at university or is a French national. They've got some Spanish but not much, or they've got some German. Well, an SKE course can boost your subject knowledge in the second language, which is very often courses and certainly schools are looking for candidates who are offering 2 languages, not just one. So an SKE course can really boost your subject knowledge and your ability to speak in that other language. School experience is not essential, it's not compulsory, and in fact has never been part of the application process for teacher training. However, it is seen as something which is really, really valuable to do. I would encourage you to look online. There are lots and lots of examples through the internet where you can observe teaching taking place in different subjects and also in primary school settings. And the internet provides an incredible mechanism and vehicle for you to get into classrooms in a virtual way without having to even step inside a school. What are the benefits of school experience? Well, I think there are 3. The first is to check whether this is the right career move for you. And the only way in which you're going to do that is by going into the classroom or looking into the classroom and trying to visualize, is this something that I want to do? Can you imagine yourself in a classroom supporting young people in their learning? And in my experience, many of the people that I support, many of whom have not been inside a classroom since they left school, when they go back in the classroom as an adult, they get really animated and they get really excited, and they wonder whether they've waited this long to look at teaching as a career, because classrooms are fun places to be. They're great creative places to be. Children are fantastic people to work with, and as I said earlier in the presentation, you just never know what's going to happen in that classroom. So get that school experience and check out whether this is the right career move for you. The second reason why I would advocate some school experience, and it doesn't have to be much, maybe a day, maybe 2 days in a local school, is because often it's an important part of the personal statement, and we'll come on to that a bit later in the presentation. But if you're going to write a personal statement, often between maybe 7 to 10 lines of that, a good personal statement for initial teacher training on UCAS will be you talking about your visit to a local school. And if that can be within the last 3-6 months, then great. And it must be analytical, not just a description of what you saw, but what was the teacher doing? How did the teacher's language and behaviour influence the learning? How did the teacher involve all the students, whether they were the most able or the least able? How did the teacher identify students with particular educational needs? How did the teacher manage the learning in terms of maybe some of the low level disruption that was taking place? How did the teacher use questions? How did the teacher start the lesson? How did the teacher relate this lesson to previous learning? All of those things you will see and understand much more clearly when you visit a school. And the third reason why I think school experience is really important is because often it's a question that they'll ask you at the interview. So having submitted your UCAS application with the 2 references, with your personal statement, you can expect to be called for interview. And often one of the questions that they will ask you is, can you tell us about any recent school experience you've had? And I think it's at your advantage if you've done some school experience, even if it was a day, visiting a local secondary school to observe maths or physics or history or modern languages, whatever your subject is, or your local primary school. To have visited a school, tried that shoe on, see if the shoe fits, and then make a positive response in your personal statement and in the interview is a really good thing. How and when to apply? Well, my response to that is yesterday. I would apply for teacher training as soon as possible. For certain subjects, it's really, really popular. Primary is always incredibly popular, particularly the schools direct salary places, really, really competitive courses. But whatever your subject, I would apply as soon as possible. But not too quickly. the application needs to be a quality application. And I think that application starts with you making contact with your preferred training providers. And by contact, I always advise people to make that contact by phone rather than email. Emails can get lost in the ether, but talking one-to-one over the telephone with a PGCE coordinator or someone responsible for initial teacher training in that school, you're going to make connection with that person, and you're going to get a feel for whether this is an institution that thinks you're a suitable candidate for teacher training and is encouraging you to apply, and is a place that's going to support you, a place where you're going to learn. So the application process for this cohort 2020, courses starting in 2020, opened last October, and you will need to look on the UCAS website to see whether there are vacancies for the subject or for the phase of teaching that you're looking into. So keep close to Get Into Teaching website, which is great. It's full of lots of material. Use UCAS website as a tool. Personally, I would avoid Google because you're going to get a lot of information. Some of it is accurate and some of it isn't. But obviously the Department of Education's website is very accurate and up to date, and also UCAS itself. But in relation to how and when to apply, you apply through UCAS largely, and I would say close to UCAS. But my main message is in relation to how to apply is to make connection through the telephone with the training providers that you're thinking of training with. In my opinion, the personal statement is a crucial aspect of the application form. The UCAS form is an application form. It will include obviously basic essential details, your qualifications, your relevant experience, and the names of two people that you want to use as a reference, who will be called upon to write a short online referee for you. But the hub of this UCAS application is the personal statement. It's not long, but it's important, and I think in my experience that a lot of people that write a really good personal statement will get an interview and often get accepted onto a place. And I'm a teacher training advisor and part of a large team now of teacher training advisors across the country, and you can get that support, free support, whichever subject you want to teach and whatever phase you want to teach. And one of our important roles is to give you one-to-one support with your personal statement. We don't write it for you, obviously, but we will give you the framework, and we will check and edit it for you to make sure that it's a good, strong personal statement. So what are the features of a good personal statement? Well, the first is to keep within the framework. So the framework is 47 lines, so it's just over one side of A4. We actually recommend that you use a font called Verdana 11. That seems to fit well with UCAS, but you can use other fonts, obviously. You need to explain in that personal statement why you want to teach. What is it that's drawn you towards teaching? And maybe it's something you've always wanted to do, and your current circumstances mean that this has now created the opportunity for you to do that. Maybe it's the fact that friends and family have said, that they thought that you would make a good teacher. Maybe it's something you've taken up recently, or you've been in your work, you've been doing some coaching training, or maybe you've been running a scout or guide group or a church group, and you've been supporting young people, and you thought, yeah, this is good. I really enjoy this. This is something I think I'd like to do more of. Well, teaching is probably the right career choice for you. You need to, in that personal statement, be really clear about your enthusiasm for teaching. So words like passion, enthusiasm, even love are really important. So for English, for example, you could say, I'm really passionate about English. I have a love for Roald Dahl. Those sorts of very emotive sentences within a personal statement are going to hook and communicate really clearly to the training provider that you have thought carefully about a career in teaching. You need to relate in that personal statement about any recent school experience you've had. Now, we've discussed that might be difficult in the current circumstances, but there are other windows into the classroom, and And at this time, those are going to be more than acceptable. So what is it about the teaching that you saw that you really enjoyed? How was the teacher working in that classroom? How was the learning being managed? What is it about that experience that convinced you that teaching was the right career move for you? As part of the UCAS application for teacher training, you'll need to find 2 people to be a referee for you. One of them would need to be an academic referee. So if you've recently left university or college, then obviously you would have a personal tutor or dissertation tutor. That's an ideal person to have as one of your references. If you are applying for a salaried teacher training course, so a Schools Direct salaried course, one of those references would need to be your current or most recent employer. But I wouldn't worry too much about the references. The references are there to make sure that you're communicating to the training provider that you have 2 people who can vouch for you, who are supporting your application. And if one of those can be a teacher, and let's face it, most of us know a teacher, then I think that's a really good thing to have. A teacher saying that they think that you would be a good candidate for teaching. I think that's a positive thing to have. The reference process, I have done it for other people, not my own candidates, but I have written references in the past for teacher training applications for actually friends of mine who are thinking about teaching. And it's not a long process. It's just a process that's making sure that there's someone there who can vouch for you, that thinks you'll be a suitable candidate to work with children and are there to support you. So find 2 people, and as long as you're not related to them, as long as they're not a member of your family, then most of us, I think, will find it quite easy to find 2 references. And if one of them is a teacher or somebody working in the academic sector, then that's great. Your interview. So you've done some school experience, you've completed your UCAS application, you've identified the training providers, the 3 training providers that you'll think of applying to. Your personal statement is in your UCAS form, and the 2 people that are acting as a referee, and you submit it. There's a £1 fee, admin fee, that goes along with that, but once that clears, then your application with your personal statement will be sent to those 3 training providers simultaneously, and hopefully, and in the vast majority of cases, the candidates I support and have supported over the last 5 years get an interview, called for interview, and that interview can take many forms, but this is your opportunity to demonstrate either your passion for your subject, but also your desire to work alongside children to support them in their learning. Teaching is about changing lives, about changing life choices, about changing life chances. And the interview is there to make sure that the people going into teaching have that basic motivation to work to support young people. So do your research, find out about that training provider. Think about some basic questions that are going to be asked of you in that interview. And certainly having a teacher training advisor is going to be really helpful. So key questions like, why did you want to train here? Why do you want to be a physics teacher? What experience have you had in the past that you can bring into the classroom? There's some key questions that you need to ask of them as well, though, in that interview. So if I was successful in gaining a place here, which schools would I be placed in? Do they think you're a suitable candidate? How does the course break up? So what will you be doing in the course before Christmas? What will you be doing in the course around Easter? How quickly will you be in that situation where you're taking whole lessons on your own? What mechanisms exist in that course for feeding back to you about the quality of your teaching? What are the teaching standards? How do you pass a teacher training course? When will you know that you've been successful? When do you start applying for real teaching jobs? So these are really key questions to ask at your interview, and those are some of the questions that you will be asked in your interview. And training providers have different mechanisms and different components of that interview. Very, very often, candidates will be asked to teach a small group of children, sometimes whole classes of children, sometimes for 15, 20 minutes, sometimes for a whole hour. So you need to be aware of what they're asking you to do. Sometimes there can be a subject knowledge test, particularly if you haven't studied that subject, or there's evidence that you haven't studied that particular subject for some time. Maybe there'll be a basic literacy or numeracy test as part of that interview process. I've had occasions when people have been asked to bring an object in to speak to an interview panel about how this object relates to a particular lesson. But I think there are three aspects and three assessments that are taking place in every single interview, in every single institutional school, regardless of the subject and regardless of the phase. And I think the three things they're looking for is, does this person have the basic subject knowledge in order to teach this particular subject? And that includes people who are trained to be a primary maths teacher, for example. The second thing I think the interview process is testing is whether you have the social skills and the communication skills and the personality that's going to engage young people in learning, that will turn them on to wanting to learn more, wanting to develop that particular skill or piece of knowledge that they have. And the third thing that I think they're looking for is that basic desire to work to support young people. Teaching is an incredibly important job, and the best teachers are teachers who are there for the students. And actually, in my experience, teachers with the least amount of behaviour problems in a classroom are teachers that are there for the children, and the children know that they're there for them. So if you're that sort of person who has a real genuine love for, say, for example, French, someone who can communicate that and ignite young people's interest in learning the language, and so that they understand why it's invaluable and why it's important to learn French and Spanish. And if you're somebody who wants to work with young people to support them in their learning and also to change their life's experience today and accelerate their opportunities for the future, then teaching is for you. As I've said throughout the presentation, I'm one of a team of over 70 teacher training advisors, a large group of teachers, well-qualified teachers, often school leaders and ex-head teachers who know this process, this application process inside out. We support personally upwards of 200-300 candidates each, and I've done that in some cases for many years. We know the UCAS process inside out. We've read thousands of personal statements. We understand the interview process well, and we attend national teacher training events around the country. So whoever you are, my strong advice is that you contact the teaching line today on the free phone number 0800 389 2500 and register either through the telephone free phone number or online for a teacher training advisor to support you. I give regular support to my candidates with all those aspects. But if they have a question, I always say to my candidates, use me as the first point of contact. So if you have a question, or if you need any support, send me a text message, send me an email. Let's arrange a call when we can have a chat about whatever aspect it is of your UCAS application. I can honestly say that I've really enjoyed supporting literally thousands of people, and many hundreds have gone on to be very, very successful teachers. So get yourself a teacher training advisor.
And to get more advice and information via our social media accounts, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And if you like us on Facebook, there's useful tips and the chance to ask questions. Our dedicated teaching line is 0800 389 2500. That's 0800 389 2500. And if you search Get Into Teaching, you'll find the website.